I'm Mike, 28M, and lately I got engaged to Nina, 28F, my high school sweetheart. We have been together for 10 years, and it seemed like the proper moment to formally propose 2 weeks ago. Not too long afterward, we decided to have an engagement party right at our house. The celebration took place last night. The invites were delivered last week. Originally meant to be a happy event, it descended into a maelstrom of family strife. It all started when I sent invites to my immediate family, my parents and younger brother, Leon, 26M. Leon had recently graduated from community college at the same time I became engaged. My parents and Leon phoned me right away upon receiving the invitations and insisted on my calling off the celebration. Not sure, I asked them why. At this point, they told me they had chosen to give Leon a graduation party on the same day my engagement celebration was scheduled. They seem to have not yet issued invites, although they were supposed to the same evening I sent mine. Since we had numerous relatives, they said there was contention, and one of us had to move aside to prevent a scheduling catastrophe. They wanted me to postpone or cancel my engagement celebration so Leon's graduation would take center stage. To be very honest, my family is not especially tight. While I get along with my cousins, my relationship with my parents and Leon has always been tense. We only interact seldom, sending birthday or holiday cards, among other things. We hadn't talked about my engagement party or Leon's graduation prior, and I hadn't known about their intentions when I decided on my date. So I said no right away when they advised me to call off my event. Though Leon is 26 and recently graduated from community college, I do not wish to minimize his accomplishment. Getting involved with Nina, whom I have loved for the previous 10 years, marks a far more significant event in my view. Since I had already sent out the invites, I informed my parents there was no way I could be canceling. Since they hadn't yet sent out theirs, they might postpone their event if they so desired. Although that was a sensible recommendation, they were unhappy, and neither was Leon. Their response astonished me not much. Leon has always been the golden kid, and growing up I have witnessed this partiality all the time. One really noteworthy incident comes from my early years. We held a low-key party for my 5th birthday with only my parents, a few of their friends, and some neighborhood children. But they hired a location and threw Leon a large themed party when he turned 5. The difference persisted across our academic years. I received a basic congratulation when I finished from middle school. Leon graduated and they threw another celebration. It was the same upon my graduation from high school and college. I knew by the time I finished my education that Leon was chosen by my parents. After high school, I moved out and started to distance myself. Since they paid for some of my education costs, I did not cut them off entirely, but after I started working, I basically stopped talking to them and they seemed unconcerned. Neither Leon nor I were close either. As children, we argued all the time. By high school, we stopped talking entirely. Thanks to our parents' behavior, he is somewhat different from me, in a spoilt and entitled manner. My parents constantly found reasons for him, even though he was a nuisance in the classroom and nearly expelled several times. When he informed them he wanted to join a startup instead of attending college, they never even got into an argument. Graphic t-shirts for teenagers seemed to him and his buddies as a breakthrough concept. Naturally, it failed, yet my parents did not hold him responsible. Even money for it, which he squandered, they provided him. After some years and many failed attempts at different businesses, Leon finally decided to go to community college to earn a business degree. My parents now wanted me to call off my engagement party so they may celebrate his graduation. I refused to do it. They accused me of being selfish and told me I was always against Leon when I objected. I attempted talking with them to steer clear of pointless conflict, but it soon became evident they wouldn't move. Frustrated, I informed them they were welcome to host their party on the same day, but I wasn't altering mine to suit Leon or myself. I hanged and blocked them then. For the following 4 days, I didn't hear from them once again, but I did hear from other relatives who had gotten invites to Leon's celebration. Their perplexity about the contradicting occurrences, I told them it was their decision, as I wanted to avoid involving anyone in the family issue and appreciated whatever event they chose to go to. Less people showing up for my engagement would be unfortunate, but I could not compel anyone to support my side. But things changed when I learned my parents were using a rather different strategy. One of my cousins told me my parents had been phoning and texting our relatives not to show up for my engagement celebration. They were fabricating stories, saying I had set my celebration to eclipse Leon's. They claimed to have been organizing his celebration for weeks and to have discussed it with me prior, which was absolutely false. That's when I resolved that I wouldn't remain silent if they were going to play dirty. I sent a note outlining what had occurred to every relative. The fact was that my parents had constantly praised every small deed Leon accomplished while neglecting my achievements. I also pointed out that it is unfair for them to want me to postpone such a significant moment in my life to fit Leon. I said at the conclusion of the message that I would appreciate it if anyone still bothered to remain in touch with me should they still choose to believe my parents' version of events. Though most of them said that they understood my position and backed me. I was anxious about their response. Many even reassured me they would come to my celebration after mentioning they had seen the terrible treatment I had experienced growing up. Knowing that Nina and I were not alone in this gave me comfort. The positive RSVPs started to show. The engagement celebration proved to be really popular. About everyone invited turned up, and we had an amazing time. People saw through their falsehoods, so it looked as if my parents' attempt to discredit me had failed. Several visitors even said they appreciated me for not wavering. They were happy I resisted their requests, since they understood how challenging my relationship with my parents had been. I felt for the first time in a long time like I was at last being recognized and valued for who I am, not only eclipsed by my brother. Nina and I were doing fantastic following the engagement celebration. We had reached a turning point in our connection with the people who really counted to us, and I felt we could at last leave all the familial strife behind us. Naturally, though, things were more complicated than that. Our doorbell rang when I woke up the morning following the party. Still half asleep, I noted the time. By just 8 a.m., my dad and Leon were standing right there, the last persons I wanted to see. Particularly after all they had attempted to pull with the party, I had no intention of letting them in. My dad insisted, though. They were here to talk, and they weren't leaving until we spoke. I originally considered phoning the police, but Nina persuaded me to hear them out and permanently stop this whole situation. I opened the door grudgingly and let them in. Second, they entered and launched an attack. Starting to accuse me of being envious of Leon, my parents said this explains why I set my party on that same day. They said I had always been against him and that I was attempting specifically to destroy his graduation party. Silent, yet grinning, Leon stood there, obviously loving the scene. Just waking up, I was still drowsy, but I attempted to be cool. When I was organizing my engagement party, I reminded them that they had not even sent out their invites. They opted to make this about rivalry, even though another day would have been readily available. I also mentioned that they had tried to discredit my event by lying to our families, thereby requiring me to explain myself. Naturally, none of it appeared to connect with them. They simply kept yelling over me, labeling me as selfish and charging me with divorcing the family. They clearly wanted to release all their resentment and aggravation on me, not come to engage in a serious discourse. About 10 minutes of them screaming had Nina had enough. She intervened and said plainly, she will contact the cops should they not leave right now. That turned them off at last. Like she couldn't believe Nina would truly say, my mother stared at her with incredulity. Leon merely looked disgusted at us both as my dad was raging. They departed, but not without slamming the door so violently the panes rumbled. As they crossed the driveway, I could hear them yelling additional insults, calling me immature, greedy, and rude. Leon even shouted something about how I had ruined everything for him. To be honest, I was so furious that I nearly chased after them to provide them some perspective. Nina halted me, though, and advised me to let it pass. She was correct. There was no use in pushing things far ahead. They obviously had little desire in hearing reason. An unknown number messaged us 1 hour later. Given we had banned all of my parents' or Leon's numbers, it was clear they were using a friend's phone. Saying that despite all, we were still family and they were disappointed that I had decided to have my engagement party on the same day as Leon's graduation, the letter was full of guilt-tripping drivel. They said they were only trying to make Leon happy after his recent setbacks, and that he was already ashamed enough about graduating at 26. They said I ought to have let him have this one thing and been more sympathetic. The last words in the message were a half-hearted apology for disparaging me to our family. Desperate to see Leon's celebration a success, they said they had no choice, but they still felt I should apologize for ruining the occasion. Reading that message simply infuriated me more. On the one hand, I realized it was classic manipulation, the type of conduct I had been coping with all of my life. Conversely, though, there was that tiny bit of me beginning to doubt myself. And suppose they were truly sorry? Suppose they really thought they were doing morally? I told Nina the message, and even she seemed divided. She agreed that it was deceptive, but she also considered that this was their means of at least attempting peace. We discussed it for some time, and finally I concluded there was nothing for me to regret. Not me was the one that produced this clutter. They were just as, if anything, they owed me a sincere apology free of restrictions or justification. We visited once more a few days later, but this time only my mother. She arrived early in the morning alone, unusual behavior. She usually had my dad or Leon at her side to support her during fights. Though I had no idea what she wanted, I welcomed her, expecting we might at last have a decent talk. Once inside, my mother arrived straightforward. She said she wanted to apologize on behalf of my dad, Leon, and herself, and felt bad about the way things had gone. She said they were embarrassed for all the fuss because they understood they overreacted. I initially considered perhaps this was the apology I had been waiting for. Then she began referring specifically to Nina. My mother claims Nina had been disrespectful on their most recent visit, threatening to call the police on my dad. She added that we were family, and that family did not call the police on one another regardless of circumstances. My mother continued, saying they expected Nina and me to apologize as well for the way we had treated, even as they were willing to own their actions. What I was listening to astounded me. Now they expect me to apologize. They show up unexpectedly, accuse me, attempt to ruin my engagement party, and for exactly what? Regarding advocating for myself, not allowing them to stroll all over me? I told my mother I valued her coming over to apologize, but I owed them nothing. Given their behavior, Nina was quite justified in telling them to leave. To be honest, Nina was my family, hence, I didn't give a damn whether or not they included her in the family. I made it plain that none of us was going to apologize. If they couldn't accept that, then our conversation had nothing to cover. I cut my mom off when she tried to claim she wouldn't allow this disrespectful conduct from me. I informed her I had no desire to keep a relationship with them anymore, so I didn't give a damn what she accepted. I had removed myself for a reason after college, and now, after all that had transpired, I was done. If she, my dad, and Leon objected, that was okay with me. After a few more minutes of backtracking, she stood up and remarked, "If that's how you feel, then we'll leave." I told her I was good with that. However, you never should expect to ever hear from us again. She departed. To be honest, I thought that would mark the end of it. She obviously made it plain that they no longer wanted me in their lives, and I had no desire to live with them. Still, deep down I realized it most likely wasn't over. My parents had a tendency of harboring resentment and distorting things into a more general concern than required. Still, for a few weeks, everything appeared to calm down, and I hoped it would be the last I'd hear from them. I was at last finding calm as Nina and I concentrated on our job, life, and future together. I could breathe once again as though the weight of my family's turmoil had lifted. Naturally, though, the tranquility did not endure very long. About 3 weeks after my last contact with my mother, one evening Nina's parents called. Living just a few blocks from my parents, they have always been wonderful, supportive, sensible, and unlike my own parents. Thus, I was not anticipating anything unusual when they phoned, but they sounded awkward when I picked them up. Apparently, the night before, my parents showed up at their residence without warning. It was late, about 10 p.m., and my folks were obviously angry. Originally unsure about what to do, Nina's parents welcomed her in as they are courteous people. That's when my parents began to project all of their resentment on them. They informed Nina's parents they had no idea where they had gone wrong in parenting me. They couldn't understand why I was being so cruel to the family and were quite offended that I had turned out this way. Leon, of course, was their brilliant star, the ideal son who decided to live with them so he wouldn't abandon them in old age. They neatly omitted the section in which Leon was freeloading at home, rent-free, while my parents paid all his bills. He was unable to afford to live on his own. They kept praising Leon and demeaning me for the next few minutes, saying I was only a letdown. Because of their crazy conduct and non-stop raving, Nina's parents began to realize that my folks could have had some drinks before arriving up. Then my parents changed their focus to Nina, more especially how she had insulted them on their most recent visit. Nina had crossed the line by threatening to call the cops and kicking them out of our house, and they were still furious about it. They told Nina's parents they had always thought of her as shy and sweet, but ever since she got that ring on her finger, she had been showing her true colors. The worst part is that my folks never came over only to grumble. They arrived armed with a strategy. They had determined that neither Nina's parents nor themselves could teach us a lesson by helping with our wedding. In their views, this would compel us to atone and begin treating them with the respect they felt they were due. What I was hearing defied belief. Actually, they believed they could control us by cutting money for the wedding, like it would make all the difference. First of all, I had no clue why Nina's parents felt dragging her into this was a smart idea. They had always been regular, kind people who remained out of the drama. Second, Nina and I hardly intended to seek wedding financial assistance. We would have found it out on our own if we needed more. We have plenty saved personally. Following that absurd exchange, Nina's parents phoned us straight away to inform us of what had transpired. Though they knew my family well enough to know something was badly wrong with them, they were rather startled at how wild my parents had become. It was a comfort when we all started laughing over the ridiculousness of the circumstances. Nina's parents did not offend anybody or let my parents' antics sour their connection with us, so I was glad. I knew, though, I couldn't let this go by. I had to put some limitations in place even if I wanted to pretend none of this was occurring. Already having crossed the line several times, my parents were pulling Nina's family into their turmoil. That is intolerable. I thus decided to unlock my parents, just long enough to message them. I kept it brief and straightforward. I would have to go legal if they continued to harass Nina's parents or anybody else in our families. Though I wasn't sure exactly what that would be, I reasoned the threat would be sufficient to cause them to retreat. While my parents have never been very adept at confronting real consequences, they have always been excellent at harassing others. After that, I never heard from them, and for some time everything settled down once more. As Nina and I kept organizing our wedding, things started to fall together with her family's help. We kept my parents totally out of the picture, and it seemed like a great weight had been taken off of our plates. Nina and I tied the lovely marriage knot in front of the people we love around a year later. Not surprisingly, my parents and Leon missed showing up. Honestly, I was relieved. Their negative vibe anywhere close to what should have been one of the best days of our lives did not appeal to me. The wedding went just as planned. Everyone that mattered was present, and we had a fantastic day celebrating with loved ones. Nina and I returned from our honeymoon a few weeks following the wedding, feeling closer than ever. Without family strife weighing over our heads, we were ready to begin this new phase of our lives together. We went months without hearing a word from my parents or Leon. Exactly what I had desired, they seemed to have disappeared. They seemed to have at last realized I was no longer interested in a connection with them. At least that is what I believed. Months passed following the wedding without a word from either my parents or Leon. It seemed dreamlike, like I had at last found the tranquility I had been yearning for so long. Focusing on our future, and for the first time in years, Nina and I were adjusting to married life, and I was not looking over my shoulder, anticipating some family strife to spoil our pleasure. That tranquility held until I received an email out of the blue. It wasn't from my parents either. Leon supplied it. The subject line was, "We need to talk," and I hadn't spoken to him in well over a year. I opened it as my curiosity won out. The message was icy and short. Our parents were having health issues, Leon explained, especially Dad, who had lately been in and out of the hospital. He said simply that things were serious and they wanted to talk about some family issues. He did not go into great detail about what was happening. Apparently, Leon claimed they had determined that person should be me, as they had been debating who would take on the duties when they could not handle anymore. When I read it, I practically started to laugh aloud. After all the years of being neglected, pushed aside, and treated like I didn't matter, they suddenly expected me to be the one accountable for them? The arrogance was just astounding. Having not heard from them in almost a year, suddenly they wanted to pass all of their troubles on me? I hardly bothered answering Leon's email either. I was not interested in being drawn back into their mess, and I most definitely would not have taken on any type of caring role for someone who had hardly noticed me until they wanted something. But the matter got rapidly more serious. A few days later, Leon phoned. Before responding, I hesitated, but curiosity won out. I reasoned I may as well hear him out. From the beginning, the talk seemed uncomfortable. Leon hardly even tried to strike up a conversation or check in on me. He launched right into the matter. Mom and Dad needed help and were in terrible health. They had been debating who would take over once they were gone for months, apparently, and they had concluded I was the most stable of all of us. Leon said they were looking to me to act as his own life was a bit disorganized. I became stunned. As he continued, I could sense my own growing wrath, but I let him finish. I gently said, "And they thought it was a good idea to make all these plans without even asking me first?" After he was finished. Leon sighed, as though he was offended that I wasn't following along exactly. "You know how they are," he said. "They are worried. They want to see that everything is taken care of after they are gone." I laughed bitterly, not sure why. "They are currently concerned? Where in my growing up was this anxiety? Where was this care while I lived mostly unseen to them?" Leon found no response to that. Talking about how difficult things were for our parents, particularly with Dad's health failing, he aimed to turn the discussion back to the present. Still, I showed no curiosity. I had spent my entire life being disregarded, only to find myself suddenly chosen as the responsible one since it suited them. "I'm not doing it," I murmured at last, cutting him off. "I will not be their backup strategy. They made decisions. Now they have to live with the results. I have developed my own life. I'm not going to abandon everything simply because they suddenly require something from me." Leon remarked, "I get it," after silently for a little period. "I am indeed. Still, you belong to the family." That word, family, really spoke to me. Family had always, in my experience, been a one-sided bargain. Only when it would be most convenient for them did I count as family. When I needed help or affection, I was secondary. But now, when they were weak and afraid, they wanted to pretend that we were one large, happy family once more. I was not finding appeal in it. My whole life, Leon, member of the family, never mattered to them. Why should it be relevant right now? He lacked a genuine response for it either. I instructed him to forward the information. I didn't want to hear any more about it, and I wasn't interested in assuming the position they had given me. I hung up before he could debate. That would be the end of it, I reasoned. But only a few days later I got a letter in the mail. It came from my mother and included pages of guilt-tripping, manipulation, and emotional blackmail. She wrote about how let down she felt in me, about how much they had given me and Leon, and about how she couldn't believe I was deserting them now, when they most needed me. Saying that Leon had always been there for them despite his own challenges, she even tried to present him as the hero and advised me to follow his lead. It was the same old tale, years of neglect and emotional detachment followed by demands and guilt when it was convenient for them. I tossed the letter in the garbage after folding it. I was not going to be coerced into feeling bad about not rescuing them from a disaster they had generated themselves. I determined that this time I was done for good after blocking their numbers once again and Leon's too. There was no reversing. I was not going to allow them to pull me down or control me into assuming accountability for their lives. I had life to enjoy, and I wouldn't be wasting it tidying after them. Things calmed once more for a while. I reached out, but I never heard from them. Free from the ongoing weight of family strife, Nina and I at last could concentrate on creating our future together. Though I knew it was not over, not entirely, I was resolved to carry on with my life on my own terms. A few weeks later, Leon sent an email with the last strike. Though only a few phrases, it communicated everything I needed to know. "Dad passed away last night. Thought you ought to be aware of." Uncertain about my feelings, I spent a lot of time staring at the email. One part of me had been anticipating this. I knew my dad's health was failing and that this day would arrive finally. I did not, however, experience grief or depression. I thought nothing. Their lives had not included me for so long that it nearly seemed unreal. My dad had never really been in my life, hence nothing had changed when he was absent. I considered saying my sympathies to Leon, but then I saw this was really another opportunity for them to try and draw me back into their orbit. I was not going to fall for it. I closed the email without responding, then carried on with my day. I was finally fine with not being in their life anymore. Story 2. When my conceited sister attempted to undermine me, our parents simply laughed it off. Everyone can now see how insane she is. This is the history then. I live right in the center of a big family. My age is the second youngest among 5 siblings. There has never been a smooth connection between me and my sister, Sarah Dot, mostly due to the 5 years that separate us in age. For Sarah and myself, it just made things more tense, even though many siblings grow closer in spite of such distances. Rather of feeling like a beloved younger sister, I was frequently treated as an unpleasant tag-along growing up. My presence appeared to irritate Sarah, particularly when I was involved in choices about the family, like choosing the movie for movie night. Let quote S go back to this year. I'm 18 now, going on 19, and Sarah just turned 24. Sarah's engagement was the big news. Y, her boyfriend, planned to pop the question at a family beach outing in early June in a quite grandiose manner. He went all out, using large white lettering and rose petals scattered on the beach to create a scene. A true spectacle. Everybody was present. My parents, myself, and all the siblings. Sarah was overjoyed when she saw the setup when we got there. Yeah, of course, she said, and there was a happy, celebratory vibe all around. Even if our youngest sibling, who is just 4 years old, didn't fully understand the circumstances, they still had a great day. This is when the fairy story comes to an end, and the drama starts. Since I'm my mom's sister, it appears that Sarah's actions after the proposal may have unintentionally pushed her to become a full-fledged bridezilla. I was immediately invited to join Sarah's bridal party, so I had a front-row seat to the whole shebang. Here is a summary of the requirements and schedule that Sarah has set, making the wedding planning process somewhat of a nightmare for everyone concerned. 1. Bridesmaids' costs. Put on clothes. It is required of each bridesmaid to buy her own gown. The price of the dress, theme shoes, and styling was a whooping $300. In addition to the outfit, we had to purchase unique blush pink shoes and pay for our own hair and cosmetics on the big day. 2. Events leading up to the wedding. Sarah has organized an opulent spa day for her bachelorette party, which will set each bridesmaid back $800. Although the day is supposed to be spent relaxing, the cost is everything but. Sarah wants to take a plane to Toronto and spend the weekend at the opulent Fairmont Hotel in preparation for her bachelorette party. Each person's anticipated cost for the hotel stay alone is $1,000. Fittings for dresses. We have to go to several clothing fittings, more for her benefit rather than just for ourselves. The additional $300 that each bridesmaid must spend for her own dress adjustments is her responsibility. 3. Engagement and wedding planning, cake and catering tastings. Sarah anticipates that every bridesmaid will be there to help choose the wedding cake, location, and food. Each bridesmaid will have to pay $25 to attend the tastings and make a reservation. The cost of attendance at the wedding is $150, which must be paid in advance by all attendees, including the bridal party. Expectations for gifts. Presents have to come from her registry list alone, or they have to be cash, check, or gift card. In order to keep track of who is giving what, Sarah has even established a spreadsheet. She has also stated that she would return any presents that don't meet her requirements. As you would expect, family and friends are feeling a great deal of stress and irritation as a result of all these requests. Sarah's conduct is misrepresented by my mom as just bride nervousness, but I view it as an extension of her nagging need to be in complete control of every circumstance. The fact that she is organizing an opulent winter wedding in a ski resort in December only serves to raise the event's complexity and cost. As things develop, I thought it may be amusing to publish reports given all the drama and the ridiculous requests. Sarah could have another bridezilla moment. You never know. We appreciate your time, and we hope to share more stories from this wedding saga's front lines soon. Edit. My sister truly went above and above with her wedding preparations. That really took everyone by surprise. Not in the best manner. She's been a bit of a boss all along, but after being married, it seemed as though she became the ruler of the realm of control. Permit me to reveal what she has been requesting from each and every one of us, the bridesmaids in particular. Sarah determined during one beauty routine that her bridesmaids had to look flawless on her wedding day. By perfect, I mean that she established this really rigid beauty regimen that we are all required to adhere to. To ensure that our skin and hair are perfect, we must schedule appointments for skincare and hair every 6 weeks. Yes, we are responsible for covering all of this out of our own money. 2. Coverage of tattoos. Everyone has a tattoo. Sarah, though, feels things should be hidden. The bridesmaid gowns are made to reach the wrists and ankles. That completes the task. Here's the twist, though. Sarah will be showcasing her own tattoos with a vivid haircut and a sleeveless outfit. She seems to be trying to make sure that she is the only one who sticks out. 3. Hair is important. We all need to change our hair color if it's not what Sarah would consider natural. That implies dyeing our hair, or in this case, donning a wig. Naturally, we also have to pay for that. 4. Body shaming and dress sizes. There are just 10 sizes available for the bridesmaid gowns. Although Sarah feels that's plenty, it's uncool since not everyone falls inside that range. Guess what? I wear a size 1-2. Sarah even gave me a book about the keto diet and began calling me fat. Is that really true? 5. Communication guidelines. This one is peculiar. Sarah and her fiancé are not permitted to speak with any of the wedding suppliers directly, including those handling the cake, food, and decorations. Nope, they need to pass via us. The ladies that attended the wedding, I've set up a separate email address for wedding-related matters and everyone can access it. Sarah. She expects us to know precisely what she wants without having to ask, which irritates my mother and is nearly hard to do. 6. Deposits made by visitors. And the visitors too? In order to guarantee their place at the wedding, they must submit a $150 deposit. They cannot attend if they do not pay. Furthermore, we need to make sure they're providing cash or purchasing items from the bridal registry. Everything needs to be tracked too. It's all simply been really stressful and, to be honest, distressing. It seems as though Sarah is attempting to plan her ideal day without considering the sentiments or financial constraints of others. My mother is also quite anxious about all these regulations and expenses. She worries that U.S. visitors won't understand why everything needs to be so pricey and regulated. Modify to. Many of you have reached out to me after I disclosed the wild wedding drama and the extremely controlling actions my sister Sarah has been doing. I've come to the realization that my family's dynamics might not precisely fit the definition of normal. You know, it's sort of eye-opening. It turns out that things aren't always as heated or stressful. Contrary to what I always assumed about families. I quote, V made the decision to make some significant changes to take care of myself after going through all of your letters and comments. I'm going to look into getting some treatment first things first. The counseling services my institution offers seem like a great way to help me deal with all this stress, and perhaps even gain a better understanding of my family. Though it might be a little frightening to consider opening up to a stranger, I believe it is essential. I also intend to attempt moving into my university housing a little early than scheduled. Right now, especially with all the wedding planning and family pressure, staying at home is simply too much. I require some breathing room and mental space, and relocating early could provide me that tranquility. A few of you have also provided really helpful and useful advice. Someone sent me a direct message with some excellent advice on how to take greater control over my personal belongings. They advised me to remove my mother from my bank account since, dare I say it, she's still connected to it. That's quite crazy, as I should really start managing my own finances now that I'm 18. I'm going to the bank to take care of this. It feels like a significant mature step to have to talk to the bank staff about making my account exclusively mine. The individual in question also reminded me to gather vital records, such as my birth certificate, for my family's records. This is really significant since with those documents, I will be able to be less dependent on my parents and become more independent. In relation to parents, I texted my mother this morning while at work. I requested to have a serious conversation with her and my dad about all of this. I propose that we have a conversation when Sarah visits her fiancé's home tonight. Thus, it's just the two of us. Not a single interruption or diversion. I believe it might aid in their comprehension of my perspective. I quote D, want to show them this post and have a peaceful conversation with them. I want them to experience everything from my point of view, and perhaps, just perhaps, they will understand why I must make these adjustments. That is the plan, then. It's a lot to take on, but with all of your help and guidance, I think I can succeed. I quote Niem, hoping that this will be a kind of new beginning, or at the very least a step in the right direction. I appreciate all of your help. It means a great deal, and I'll keep you informed on developments. Third edit. You guys are absolutely correct in everything you've said in the comments, which is something I've been thinking a lot about. My family situation is absolutely not typical. It quote strange how, after growing up believing that all families are the same as yours, you discover that this isn't actually the case. There's a lot to process. I was going about my daily business at work today, but I couldn't help but think about what you all brought up. My choice was to give my aunt a call. Now, to let you know my aunt is not that bad. In reality, she's also my godmother, and she's always supported me. She is among the few individuals who truly understands how eccentric my mother can be. She even calls my mother crazy. We had a lengthy phone conversation about everything, including how my parents have been treating me differently from my siblings since I was a little child and the absurd wedding requirements for my sister Sarah. That is what is known as favoritism, when parents unfairly choose certain children over others. It was great that my aunt actually paid attention to me and recognized where I was coming from, since sometimes I feel like I'm overreacting. But she was sure that I wasn't. My aunt believes that I ought to sit down with my parents and have a sincere conversation, not only about the wedding details, but also about my childhood and beyond. She advised me to be honest with them about how I've been feeling and to clear the air. To be honest, it's a little unsettling to consider, but she's correct. She also assured me that she will be there for me, which is really comforting. This is the strategy. I'm coming home after my work shift and quickly packing an overnight bag. In order for me to be prepared in case I have to spend some time at my aunt's house, my aunt promised to stop over and pick it up. After my parents' conversation, you never know what to expect from these discussions, and it makes sense to be ready. Pertinent remarks prior to the post. In the end, she will have to acknowledge that money controls many people's lives, and that, should she choose not to return, this will prevent others from taking part in the way you had intended. I quote, V tried telling her that, but she won't listen. Her fiancé, who works as an IT guy, earns over $120,000 annually, and she makes $100,000 as an accountant, so she can easily afford this. Inform your mother and sister that you won't take part unless all of your expenses are covered. When your sister is acting like a wild child, your mother shouldn't strive to maintain harmony. I quote, hoping her fiancé withdraws. All right, he refuses to. He adores the spiciness she has. They go well together since he's a much more composed man today. The only one who can soothe her is him. What is his family's opinion about the entrance charge to his wedding? On his side of the family, it's customary. It's not usual among Italian families, despite what they say. I recently learned this. This is ridiculous. I concur with you entirely. My issue is that I can't afford it without incurring further debt from my college loans. I'm afraid about being in debt because student loan interest rates are at 26%. Inform your mother that you lack the kind of funds required to be a bridesmaid for a sibling. Inform sis that you are welcome to be included outside of the wedding party. It quote S. Likely that you'll take the initiative. She has 13 bridesmaids, 12 female, 1 male, to correspond with her fiancé's fraternity class. In his class, he formed brotherhoods with 13 others. It may or may not imply anything, but it's unique. That means 2 of the guys would have to walk together if I dropped out. Allow the OP's significant opposing remark. I have had a conversation with her. I should save money, she argues, since I'm her sister. My parents are unable to give me the $2,000 I need for expenditures since they are spending nearly $100,000 on the wedding. My tuition for the institution I'm attending in the autumn is $17,000. Unusual parenting decisions here. $100K for the nuptials. However, let kids cover their own tuition. Did your sister attend a university? I would inform my parents that I don't want a $100,000 wedding comparable to the kids, and I would be asking them to cover my college expenses, etc. Furthermore, what's extra $2,000 if they can afford to pay $100,000? The cost of AP tuition has always been on us. For everyone's wedding or honey, mom and dad put money aside. First patch. So, where should we begin? I was going to give you a heads up a week ago on my sister's predicament and the ridiculous demands of the wedding, but life threw me a curveball as usual. My mom abruptly announced that she felt terribly unwell and went to bed quite early. We had planned to get down as a family and speak things out. Approximately 6 p.m. This was different from her, which confused everyone. Her illness persisted beyond that evening, so we had to postpone our big family conversation. However, as we assisted my sister in moving into her fiancé's home, mayhem broke out. All of it was overwhelming and diverting. By the time things had subsided and we had her settled in, my parents appeared to have entirely forgotten about our scheduled conversation. They just forgot about it and ignored it as if it were unimportant. It took us 2 days to get back to our major conversation. Sincerely, there was a lot to take in from what we discussed, and it took me a whole day to digest it all. The best part is right here. Only half of what was going on was known to my dad. It seemed to him that he was just paying for a portion of the honeymoon and my sister's wedding attire, but there was so much more that he was unaware of. Since money is kind of at the core of a lot of these problems, let me to go back a little and explain. For each of us children, my parents opened a $25 K account that would be used when we reached the age of 19 or began our post-secondary education. The money was supposed to be ours to spend any way we pleased. My dad was preparing to transfer my share to me when everything went haywire just as I became 19 years old. This is where things become tricky, though. My sister soon got engaged, and shortly after, she had a heated argument with my mother in which she pretended to be the victim and claimed to have been ignored. Thank God for my mom, who has a tendency to be too sensitive and often feels bad. This resulted in a choice that, my dad didn't realize at the time, would cause a lot of controversy. My 2 elder brothers' housing and educational costs are paid since they serve in the military. They hadn't even touched their $25,000. This left $50,000 sitting there. There's a lot of money at stake when you add that to the $25,000 from my sister's account and my own $25,000. My sister's wedding is getting more and more extravagant, so my mom decided to use some of this money for that instead. Given that I had saved $17,000 on my own, my mother reasoned that she could give me $1,150 later for a down payment on a house, car, or even my own wedding. Assuming it would suffice. She was unaware of the impact this would have on everyone else, particularly on me. Speaking now of my sister, she has always been somewhat cunning. She is an expert at manipulating people's feelings. With the help of some very insightful comments from all of you and resources from different subreddits, I'm beginning to recognize the patterns. My sister took advantage of my mother's guilt about previous problems. A little background is provided here. My mother had to receive 4 months of out-of-home treatment for severe postpartum depression after I was born. With a newborn, 2 small boys, and my sister, who was around 5 at the time, my dad was left to manage everything. Although our nanny was there to assist, she was obviously unable to take the place of our mom as our emotional support system. My sister was greatly impacted by this. She felt excluded and abandoned, especially since the nanny was more preoccupied with looking after me when I was a newborn. Upon my mother's return, my sister wasn't upset with her. Instead, she focused all of her ill will and hatred on me. I came to represent the reason her mother stopped paying attention to her. Once, it got so bad that she tried to suffocate me with a pillow. However, our family later dismissed it as her coping mechanism. This should have been a red flag, but everyone just saw it as a quirky family story. As we grew up, my sister's tactics evolved from fighting over toys to manipulating situations to get more significant things like trips, or even controlling how the family money was spent. This latest scenario with the wedding funds is just the latest chapter in a long history of her using emotional manipulation to get her way throughout all of this. My dad has been my rock. He's been more like a best friend than just a dad. My relationship with my sister was okay for a few years when I was younger, but it soured again when my mom unexpectedly got pregnant with our youngest sister. This new pregnancy somehow reignited all my sister's old resentments and insecurities, and once again I became the target of her anger. So that's the full story. As complex and messy as it is, sharing this has been both tough and therapeutic. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to navigate all this family drama, but having a place to talk about it and getting your support means the world to me. I'll definitely keep updating as things develop. Thanks for sticking with me through this long post. So, now that the background information is complete, here's what happened a day after my sister moved out. I asked my mom and dad to please finally have the conversation with me. Mom was feeling better, so we sat down and started talking. I told them how I felt, how much of a financial toll it would be on me, how it wasn't fair, etc. Well, Dad blew up. He didn't know about the $100,000 or the things the sisters were doing, etc. He didn't like the fact that Mom used a lot of your father and I agreed to talk, even though they had an I showed group chat screenshots. We worked through the wedding issue I don't have to attend, and the $25 for me issue. Dad is signing it over early. When I was asked to go to my room for a bit because Dad and Mom wanted to talk, they settled the budget issue on their own. Dad then asked why I didn't feel comfortable talking to them earlier, so I showed them this post. My dad snapped. He immediately called my sister and told her to come here ASAP because he needed to talk to her and would not accept excuses. She said she would be here in 4 hours because she was with her fiancé and his parents. Dad pressed and she hung up and walked off. Dad told me to go to my room once again, but to leave my phone so they could go over the post and see the comments. I don't know exactly what happened, but Mom came to talk to me later. She then told me about the PPD, etc. I didn't know about it earlier. We solved our issues, and I finished by asking if my sister would go to therapy because Mom was convinced that the 4-month leave caused this stuff in her. She said she tried but couldn't force it. I told her if her sister doesn't go, I'm going NC with her and possibly LC with Mom. Dad then joined the conversation and assured me I would get my money and I wouldn't have to go to a wedding if I didn't want it. Since her sister is charging $150 per guest, she can pay for her grandson's wedding through that soon-to-be bill, and his family aren't paying for HD, apparently, so now they have to, or his sister doesn't get to have her ski hill wedding. Speaking of the $150 fee, y'all were right. It was her sister who concocted the whole thing and told Mom it was an Italian thing. We talked to Sister Mila when she dropped her sister off. Sister doesn't drop a meal was shocked that Sister had said that there is apparently a money dance, but there is no $150. So on to what occurred when my sister arrived back. She came after 5 hours, and while Mila was there, she was nice as pie. But after Mila left Olarak, the gates of hell, she questioned why Dad interrupt the calm evening and ordered he drive her back. Dad responded he didn't care, and to sit down she refused, and they argued. Finally, she sat down when Dad started bringing out different tactics, like money or telling Mila about her true character, which I assume her fiancé hasn't seen much of. I was dismissed from my chamber again. There was a lot of heated ranting back and forth and a lot of manipulation from her sister, including threats of LC and C or not seeing prospective grandkids in the future. She was attempting to encourage Mom to go back to the original plan. The $100,000 plan, and Mom and Dad weren't budging. The arguing continued and halted when my dad shouted, stating, Mom isn't her punching bag and her PPD is not her fault, and if she was so furious about it to go to therapy. After that, I was summoned back down and we went over all the concerns, starting with the veto book. My sister attempting to defend me, saying I was obese and lazy, but my dad supported me. Sister started to weep, and Mom advised Dad to be a bit gentler, which he did. We finally talked everything, and I felt like part of the family instead of like a punching bag. After a while, Sister took an Uber out of fear for her life. We're going to hold off on talking about what the family needs moving ahead in order to be healthy until Christmas, when the brothers are back in town. But either we shut her out or we go to treatment. My sister's entire economic problem is still being worked out by my parents, who are now lost. My parents informed them that everyone would have to make in-law contributions in order for such a wedding to go place. Yes, it is absurd to spend $100,000 on a wedding. As of last hearing, her sister will receive $15,000 for the wedding. Basically $5,000 since the outfit has already been ordered and $10,000 is being kept for something material, and her in-laws are generously contributing $15,000, 10 of which will go toward the wedding and 5 for the honeymoon. Regarding my education, tomorrow my father and I will visit the bank to settle the loan cancellation fee. I was forced to obtain the loan, only formally begins when I go back to school. So happily, there isn't much of a cancellation cost. Since my dad acknowledges that I shouldn't have needed to take out the loan in the first place, he is covering the cost. My parents decided that my first year of college and living expenses would not be covered by my budget of $17K or $25K. Instead, they would pay themselves the whole money they had set aside for me, which would be deposited into a TFSA for future use. I mean, my sister despises me to no end, and my relationship with my mom is still a little difficult. She maintained that I was to blame for everything and that as a result, her relationship with her fiancé and in-laws had suffered irreversible harm. From the wedding throughout her life, she has been me. To be honest, I don't mind. I don't consider it to be the loss of a sister. I see it as the death of a bully. I vowed never to abuse my younger sister that way in front of my parents. Like my father and brothers were for me, I'm going to be the role model she needs and her guardian. I believe I covered all the necessary ground, but please don't hesitate to ask any questions if you still have any. I'm grateful to the subreddit for teaching me about limits and communication, as well as for showing me what a true family looks like. I have a really wonderful life, you beautiful people. Remarks that are pertinent. I have a point that seems to be completely overlooked. Your sister attempted to execute you. That is significant. I hope you spend some time discussing this in therapy. It's really important. It is distressing. Not only that, but it's not acceptable that your parents made a hilarious justification out of it. It quote s terrible. And I genuinely hope that you make your mother face the reasons behind her permission for this conduct. Why had she not immediately scheduled her sister's treatment sessions? Obtaining answers to these queries is crucial, and you should accept your sister's apologies. Additionally, you might want to think about informing her fiancé of the money she requested. He has a right to be aware of what he is getting into. At first, Opie's parents didn't find the story amusing. The sister was the one who mostly said, "Oh, it was a joke." It was a jest. Naturally, when we were older, as my parents never left my elder sister and I alone themselves, my older brother was either alongside me or they were in the room. The joke was only created after I turned 10-11 and my sister and I were beginning to get along. Sincerely, I felt it was a joke and I accepted her apology. I now realize it wasn't, and she has detested me from the beginning. Regarding the therapy, I neglected to note that she progressed from 7 to 10. She was first only seen by a doctor once a month from around 4.5 to 6.5, but she eventually learned to speak precisely what they wanted to hear. Thus, they eliminated the requirement for visits. My father approved of this. My sister's mother sought a second opinion and discovered the top child psychologist in Alberta, who treated her for 3 years, nearly 4 years in the end. They claimed to have taught her everything and to have helped her deal with trauma, etc. But it seems to me that she just developed the ability to tell them what they wanted to hear. Regarding her fiancé, he is aware that I left him a lengthy text and voicemail, and we had a 2-hour phone conversation. Toward the end, he simply waved it off. Looking back, I believe he was aware of it. He also showed some unsettling characteristics. Do your parents think that by allowing your sister to continue in this manner for so long, they failed her? She attempted to suffocate you with a pillow after being mistreated. It was also a show for families. It seems to me that your parents are assigning on her all of their errors from when they were equally involved. It certainly seems to have had an impact on me. When she was a toddler, she displayed certain worrying behaviors, including biting, shoving, or intentionally injuring my brothers or other children at the daycare. However, I believe that the lack of a father figure for the boys was what ultimately shattered her. The nanny took care of me mostly, and she and my aunt took care of the motherly duties, but she is not a substitute for Mom. Despite the fact that things did improve when I was 12, here's the issue. At 14, Sister began to hate me again since tiny sister was in her womb. She told me all the reasons why she despised me, how I was stealing her attention, etc. I am aware that my sister began treatment at the age of 710 because to her bitterness against her mother. When my mother intervened to defend her, my sister would vent her frustrations on the family and the home.mom, or would scold the canine. Yes, your father does not just absolve himself of responsibility by stating that he chose to raise the boys instead of her, in the same manner as you are unable to satisfy all of your mother's requests. You're describing genuinely terrible parenting, which is why your sisters went crazy. I know you like your dad, but from her point of view, I believe they both made her and played a major role in the fact that you were bullied your whole childhood. They really let you two down by failing to recognize the seriousness of her apologies. Even at 5 years old, she continued to get such maltreatment. All right, it's not like Dad decided to raise the boys exclusively, you know. By that I mean that we drove a single automobile. The lads participated in lacrosse, football, and hockey. They traveled constantly, twice a week. When Dad was there, he would take sister on father-daughter dates. If she didn't get a new device or toy, she would become unhappy. These were called pixel checks, and she adored them. Even at 3, when I wanted to play and she stopped using them. Her newfound possessiveness toward them lasted for a month. Mom was permitted to spend the weekends with us, spending time with her sister while reading stories, watching movies, and combing her hair. Honestly, I don't consider it to be neglect. They intervened when she began to exhibit severe symptoms, and as a result of the pillow episode, I was never ever alone myself with my sister. After taking her to treatment, the physicians declared her to be in good health. Quite simply, I believe she is an expert manipulator. OPI in another remark to give you an idea of her personality. Her fiancé was taken by her from a different female she knew, all because she didn't care about the other girl and only wanted him. In the hopes that a child will outgrow adult behaviors, therapists frequently wait to diagnose BPD until the patient is over the age of 18. BPD sufferers are frequently skilled manipulators who can deceive therapists by disguising their actions, lying about their feelings convincingly, and masking their behaviors. They constantly justify their actions in their minds, much like an actor playing a part, which can deceive people who are blind to the truth. I quote, am about to go down another rabbit hole as a PhD candidate. However, my sister won't visit a doctor unless it's to confirm that she was correct all along. They wouldn't even allow me to own a doll of Lucy without taking it and setting it on fire. For those nearby, traveling to North Carolina appears to be the best choice. Those whose BPD is untreated. Don't let it bother you. Without the drama and absurd accusations, your life will be much more tranquil. Getting your sister into therapy is also not something to worry about. Only those who are sincere and open to change can benefit from therapy. BPD sufferers are frequently neither. You ought to research therapy on your own. I did, and it was very beneficial. In addition to reading discussion boards for families going through similar problems. In an effort to maintain normalcy, parents frequently act as enablers and work to keep the family together. However, having a sibling with a disorder is not typical at all. You can start to heal as soon as you realize that this isn't normal. Oh, and speaking of guilt trips and money, Mom has a therapy session this Monday. After she and her father attend couples counseling. I'm beginning individual therapy for a variety of reasons. My siblings. I have no idea what's happening with them because they are hundreds of kilometers away. My sister is also playing house. At the time of the argument, my younger sister wasn't present. We saw to it that she and her daycare buddy got to play together. 3 months later, and hi to all of you. It has been a very long time, so I thought I would give you some news. I'm sorry. I recently discovered my lost account login. So on to the post. Family therapy is going really well. My 2 brothers were given temporary leave to come back to Canada. They were both stationed overseas for a bit. I believe they have to go back after this to help the process along. Our family is getting back on track, and my mom and I are closer than ever. It honestly feels like I have my best friend back. As for my sister, honestly, I don't know what's going on with her. A friend of mine still follows her social media, and everything seems well. The wedding was moved up to November 26th instead of December 17th, like she originally planned. She and her fiancé have bought a place, apparently, and this is rumored she's pregnant. She's cut all of us off. And her fiancé. His family is talking his head about us, but we're holding firm. In other, more interesting news, I'm loving Ottawa. I go back home once a month for in-person treatment, but I also get 3 virtual sessions monthly on top of that dot. My oldest brother is getting married, so while I lost a bad sister, I got an incredible sister. She's very nice. Texts me every couple of days, gets me Uber and eats orders while I'm down. Despite being provinces distant, she's very nice. She asked whether I would feel comfortable being her mom. She's an only kid and her mom passed away, and I agree, Dot. So by this time next year, I'll have an official new sister. There's not a whole lot else to say, but I also have a boyfriend. He also is in the army. Unable to avoid it, I suppose. Our 1-month anniversary is in January, and I'm looking forward to it. He's also really supportive and loving. In any case, Reddit, thank you very much. I wish each and every one of you has a wealthy, healthy, and fruitful life, since you are all incredible, lovely, and wonderful people. I cherish each and every one of you. Really sweet, adorable. Hi to all of you. I'll give a summary as a lot of people were curious about what transpired during the wedding yesterday. Not much happened at the ceremony because her husband's family and I were not allowed to attend, but my relatives, friends, and her husband's family filled me in. The bride's mother arrived wearing an off-white gown, and some guests brought their children. Despite the fact that the ceremony is kid-free, but the reception was when the real drama unfolded. I think the Mog brought one of the groom's ex-girlfriends in the hopes that it would split them up, but it didn't work, and I feel awful for my sister because of it. She made an attempt to sabotage my sister's relationship with her current spouse, but her spouse and I commend him for this. I gave her the order to go. To be honest, it wasn't that dramatic overall. They made it to the altar and are departing either today or tomorrow for their honeymoon. Nonetheless, at the conclusion of the wedding speeches, it was verified that my sister is really pregnant. The groom presented his with a slideshow, featuring an ultrasound image and the baby's last name on the final slide. I apologize for the lack of a status report.